Welcome back to Morrison Madness. So in our last episode, we talked about things that I would do differently or things that I would tell my younger self to try and, make life better. So this time, we're going to let LaShelle take the steering wheel.
You're going to put me in the hot seat?
Yeah.
This is tough.
When we were talking about it off screen, she tried to tell me that there wasn't anything that she did differently. And I started asking her questions about stuff. And she's like, no, I still would have done that. I'm like, okay, that doesn't even make any sense. That's just dumb. But whatever. I asked her if she would still go into epidemiology. And she's like, yeah, I learned a lot of stuff. I'm like, okay, so why not take grocery bagging and learn that you should lay bottles down in a grocery bag and not stand them up so they don't fall over in your car and spill all over your car. You're going to learn something in anything that you take.
Well, I realize that.
I just feel like you could have taken something that would have taught you something more applicable to your life.
But that's the thing. Like epidemiology, I learned a lot about physiology
before 2020.
Stuff that way.
Nobody could even pronounce or spell epidemiology.
That's not true. That's not true. So there's actually, this is a little off topic, but it's fine because I don't have a whole lot to talk about. So it'll be a 5-minute podcast if we just talk about what I would have changed. But when I started my master's, I remember my mom even saying, "Are you even going to be able to find a job with that? Like, I don't know what that is. Are there jobs out there for that? What is epidemiology? I don't know what that is." And then while I was in epidemiology was when the bird flu broke out in Iowa. And then the state epidemiologist was on the TV talking about how the bird flu was me. And my mom would call me all excited about how I could have that job.
I remember we were somewhere and you were telling somebody that your master's was in epidemiology. And they literally said, "You study skin?"
Yes. Yes. It's a very common thing that it's either you studied skin or bugs because there's ectodemiology or something like that, which is bugs. But yes, and we actually have t-shirts. We had t-shirts made when I was in my master's, and that we don't study skin, we don't study bugs was one of the top 10, 2 of the top 10 things on there. Because, a lot of people don't realize that it's the study of diseases. But the thing is it wasn't so much the diseases, but I don't know that I would have learned. I learned how to analyze things, how to better listen to the media and be able to pick out fallacies, be able to understand how they're using statistics in certain ways and stuff that way. That I don't know if I would have learned that. Well, now that's
pretty much every time they open their mouth, it's a fallacy.
But I don't know that I would have learned those skills as well in something else.
Maybe not.
And there may, but like thinking if I got into political science or if I had gone into, I don't know.
I think you're overcomplicating this question.
It could be.
It's little things.
Right.
Would you have kept up your lifeguard?
Yes.
Thing. Oh, see?
Yes.
It's weird to me that I have to drag stuff out of you.
Oh, you mean would I kept it up until now? No. But
until you met me. This is all about...
Yeah, no. Well, up until when I met you, no, I probably wouldn't have kept it up quite that well, but I did. I had it kept up close to when I met you.
And what about your Red Cross training?
Same thing.
Same thing. Well, see? It's little things like that.
So...
Would you have taken more piano lessons?
Yes.
Well, see?
Yes.
And you before this, you were over here going, there's nothing I would have done. There's a million things that you would have done different.
But there aren't big things to where I look back and go...
But none of mine were big things.
Well, they're somewhat big. Getting let go from the military when you weren't expecting to get let go from the military is a big life-changing thing. And that's not stuff that I can really think of and go, had I read the fine print...
Compared to all the other shit in my life, that was a very small thing.
Well, okay. But... that's kind of what I'm trying to think of is there something to where when I look back and go, had I known stuff differently, would I have done something differently at the time? Yes, piano would be one of those. My mom plays piano amazingly, and like every child, I didn't want to learn what my mother was teaching me. And then part of it too was just life, right? It's so much easier to say, oh, well, this came up, so we'll have your lesson tomorrow, right. Or we'll have your lesson next week, or what have you. And so then we just didn't stay on top of it the same way that if I had had somebody outside that wasn't family teaching me how to play piano, maybe I would have learned more. It's still something that, one day when I'm retired, I probably will take piano lessons because I think it would be fun.
There you go.
But I don't think that I would want it. I wouldn't have wanted to play it professionally. Like I don't.
And I'm not
Right.
saying that. I'm just saying.
No, right.
Do you wish you would have kept up at it?
Yeah, I wish I played piano better than what I do. I wish I had more time now to even sit down and just tinker around.
Tinkle?
On the piano, tickle the ivories, kind of thing. And I did. I took some piano while I was in college. Like I did go back and try and take some piano at the time. But yeah, I don't know. There's not a whole lot to where I would have said, oh, had I known then what I know now, I would have done X, Y, or Z differently, right? The piano thing doesn't really affect my life as a whole. Like if you had stayed in the military, you may have a lot different in your world. If you hadn't had to declare bankruptcy when you got your divorce, there might be things that are different in your world to where you didn't struggle as hard or what have you. And I don't feel like I have that, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I get that. But at the same time, had I not done those things, maybe I wouldn't be up to the struggle.
True.
And maybe when things got hard, I would just give up more.
Right.
But because I did have to struggle, some people might say declaring bankruptcy was giving up. You can look at it that way, but I can tell you that the struggle afterwards of not being able to borrow money, not being able to, buy a car, buy a house, all of that kind of stuff, it's a struggle.
Right. Right. No, I get that. So let's see. Growing up, things I would have done differently. I love the fact that I was a lifeguard. I wouldn't have done a different job. Like I wouldn't have thought to do something differently that way. So
Are there any things that you didn't do, though, that you wish you would have?
So one of the things would be growing up in my hometown, you were a doctor, a teacher, or a lawyer, or you owned a business, so in owning a business, it was, you worked in a business, maybe you were a banker or something along those lines, but there wasn't this idea of, like, I didn't know literally what an engineer was as far as an engineering major until after I had been at college for a while. I thought all engineers drove trains.
Right.
Right? I didn't understand what engineering was. It was a completely foreign concept. Now, there's probably engineers in my hometown, but it's not a job that was public in the way that, like in Iowa City, I feel like the high school kids here know what engineering is. They talk about it. There's people that...
Well, and that there's different kinds of engineering. I mean,
right.
Some of them build buildings, some of them build cars or tractors or whatever, yeah.
I remember people talking about going to like Iowa State and majoring in agriculture. And I was like, why would you need a college degree to farm? Like, and then now I understand. But at the time...
It may not be rocket science, but it ain't grandma's garden.
No, right. At the time, the people that were around our hometown, it unless you grew up in farming, you didn't really understand why you would need a college degree to continue farming. You were already doing it, right? So that would be one thing that I would change, is somehow have more knowledge of what there is out there. Because I probably would have gone a completely different path and not done psychology and then epidemiology and then now doing educational psychology. I probably would have gone down more of the student development realm. I didn't know even when I was doing my master's that I could have done student development or student affairs and then gotten my job at honors and actually been trained for it.
And that's what I'm saying. The whole thing is about having the knowledge now.
Right. Yeah, that probably, I would have gone and gotten a student affairs master's rather than epi. But at the same time, the stuff that I learned from epi has helped me so much in different things that have come up. And like when we got the coronavirus and understanding that and knowing how to kind of deal with the public and stuff like that, I wouldn't have known any of that or what should be done or what could be done in that way had I not had the epi background. And I think it's been a huge thing. So I don't want to give that up. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard to say.
But maybe you could have taken a few other classes that there's a few classes that you could have swapped out that would have given you more insight into the student development.
Sure.
Or classes that you could have taken as an undergrad had a minor and a major or a double major. I mean,
right. Yes. Yeah. Because I took everything I could with sign language when I was an undergrad, but it wasn't until after my master's that I got my associates in interpreting. So totally did that out of order. But I did that because I didn't know at the time when I started my associates, I didn't have a full-time job. I went back to lifeguarding.
Right. And think about it now. If you could have gone and gotten your associates and gotten your license clear back then.
And been interpreting the whole time through college and what have you, it would have been different. Sure.
See? That's what I'm talking about, the little things. So there's lots of little things. You said there's nothing I would have done different.
But it's not something that I think about, I guess. I don't.
My life's a Doris Day movie.
I don't have one of those where I'm like, oh, I wish I would have done that differently. I don't think of it that way. I just don't. The biggest thing was I didn't even know there were possibilities to do it differently on some things. And then maybe, yes, I would have done stuff differently. I was mostly done with my master's when I realized I really didn't want to be a doctor. That's the whole reason I went on with the master's that I did, not because I was really interested in epi.
Well, I don't want people to think that, I'm woe is me and I wish I would have, I
No,
want to
right.
go back and rewrite my whole life. I'm just saying, it's one of those, if you could tell your younger self.
Yeah.
I'm a very happy person. I have a good life. I have,
Yeah.
good relationships with most of the people in my family that I want to have relationships with. I have a lot of good friends.
Right.
I think I have a good relationship with my wife. I'm starting to question that after the last podcast, but I thought it was good. I may have to get some insight from the AV guy. See if he knows what I'm doing wrong.
I would say one of the big things that I would have done differently is I would have gotten pet health insurance when I got Kaylee.
Oh.
I would have, at the time, it didn't...
Who would have thought that she would have had all of those little things wrong with her that turned into multiple surgeries, $600,000?
Yeah, well, not quite that much, but...
Yeah, that one was.
600,000?
No, 600.
Okay.
1,000.
Right, 600 to $1,000 for the surgery, right. And having the surgeries for her kidney...
bladder stones.
Bladder stones, thank you. And then the last surgery that we had to decide that it wasn't worth having the surgery, because that would have been $10,000 for that surgery to fix her leg, and who knows whether or not that would have actually healed because it was such a severe break and what have you. And she had the other
with all illnesses. Of the cancer tumors.
Well, they weren't tested for cancer, but there was tumors. Yes.
Yes.
So they could have been fatty tumors. They're not really sure, but.
They felt like with all the other symptoms that she had, becoming diabetic, all of that stuff progressing so fast,
But yeah, all the surgeries and stuff. I mean, and maybe, overall, I would have spent more on the pet insurance than I did on the surgeries, and I'm fairly decent with money to where I can save up, so it's not that big of an issue. But knowing now how expensive some of those surgeries can be, and if she had been a puppy and hit by a car and then needed that kind of a surgery, I couldn't have done anything. And then I really would have felt super guilty kind of thing, right? So, if an animal needs a $10,000 surgery, you need pet health insurance. So that would be one of the big things that looking back or looking forward, I'm more apt to say, yeah, we're going to get that. We're going to have pet insurance for that instead of hoping that we just have enough saved kind of thing. And I feel like then that also helps on the decisions of being able to provide that care. So that would be one thing.
Makes sense to me.
The other probably big thing is knowing now that I wouldn't have been married until I was in my mid-30s, and how many times we have tried to have a kid of our own, that it's just not possible at this point, that we don't believe. I would have probably had the procedure to have eggs stored when I was younger, and so then that way there was a possibility to still do that later on in life. But hindsight's 20/20.
Exactly.
So, but that would be.
I worry about that procedure, because if you have that procedure, let's say you decide, it's 30, I'm 30, I'm going to have that procedure. Then what? Let's say you get married at 33. Does it reduce your chances of being able to have an actual pregnancy?
Not usually. Not as much. So while yes, females only have X number of eggs, right? They remove so many, but usually my understanding, and again, this is not an area that I study, but my understanding is that most women are going through menopause, what have you, earlier enough to where there's still eggs there that just never do anything. So they're able to take the eggs before they necessarily mature. So my understanding is like individuals that have had egg retrieval and storage done, they don't necessarily go through menopause years earlier than what they would have.
Yeah, but I didn't know if it decreased your chances of getting pregnant naturally.
No.
Okay.
Nope, I don't believe so. No. And it could, but my understanding is no, it doesn't.
Not an area that I have any expertise,
But,
obviously.
Right. So, and who knew that was one thing that I always told my mom when I was younger is that I was going to get married and have kids young because I wanted to be young for my kids and be able to do stuff with them. And,
I'm sorry I ruined your dream.
You didn't ruin my dreams, but, I was in college. I focused on school and education and then work, and the right guy, you weren't coming around soon enough. That was the problem, I would have met you 15 years earlier. But then you wouldn't have grace, we wouldn't have grace. And so I wouldn't give that up either. So yeah, that would probably be the other thing when you just, I didn't have time to prep for this. So when you just asked me that question, those are the two things that come to mind is
right.
The pet insurance and doing something so I could have had a kid later in life kind of idea of my own biological child. But, there's adoption and there's foster care, and we've talked about that, and that
right.
might be something we do. And at some point, if we get farther enough that we can actually go down that path, we'll talk about that on here, I'm sure. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. The piano one is a good example. Like I wouldn't have come up with piano on my own, probably. I don't know. If there were opportunities, I did my best to be able to do them. Like I was able to go sing in a choir that traveled Europe to 7 different countries in 16 days. What a whirlwind. But, and I worked my butt off to make enough money, and my mom helped a ton with that for bake sales, and she crocheted. I don't know how much stuff she crocheted to sell for people to make enough money so I could afford to go on that kind of thing. So, I don't have those things where I wished I would have done something that was an opportunity and I was just like, oh, it's not enough. Like we made sure that I really did those opportunities. Here's one. So when I was really little, and I didn't know this, so I didn't really have a choice. When I was little and I was in dance, I was actually asked to be part of, there were twin boys that were dancers, and I was asked to be one of the girls. They wanted 2 girls to dance with these 2 boys and have like a dance group to go and perform and compete in stuff. And that group, a year after I was asked, and my mom said, no, we're too busy. She doesn't practice enough the way it is. And so I don't think it's a good idea. And so
they went on Star Search with Ed McMahon.
They did.
Oh, is that really?
That's true. 100% true. You took it away.
Sorry.
So, they did. I remember. And the best part was that we were literally sitting in my living room watching it, and my mom started crying. And I was like, why are you crying? Like, I'm so confused because they were doing great. They actually won several times. Like, they were on several weeks in a row. And again, I was young. Like, I was 7 or 8. And so I'm still like 8 or 9 years old when they're on Star Search. And so I don't really remember how Star Search even worked, but I think you were on more than 1 week. Like, you had to get enough to get to the next week or something that way. I don't remember for sure.
I don't remember either.
But yeah, so we were watching it, and my mom all of a sudden started crying, and I'm like, why are you crying? And she's like, you could have been on that. I told them no, and I'm a terrible mother. So that would have been cool, like, to be able to have that kind of an opportunity. But that wasn't a choice of mine, and I don't regret. Like, I'm not upset with my mom for it or anything. I don't know where they are now. I don't know if they're professional dancers, but yeah.
In a van down by the river.
Yeah, I could have been on Star Search.
There you go.
There you go. That's... know. I love the fact that I'm all over the board with a lot of stuff, you know? It's one of the things that, like, when I started working at Honors and they wanted me to write a little bit about myself, I actually likened my educational background and my interests to a patchwork quilt.
What about when you were on the Texaco whatever thing with Jake?
Oh, yeah, some sort of singing competition, and I was supposed to go to...
Yeah, don't you wish you would have pursued that a little bit more?
Go to Nashville? Yeah, that might be something that, you know, if I had an opportunity. The thing was...
See, I think part of the issue is you've done so many things in your life that you forget about the little things that didn't...
Pan out. Sure.
And you're still happy with your life, so you don't really sit around and dwell on them.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I don't overly dwell on a lot of those things.
Yeah, there aren't a whole lot of things that I think about every day or every week and go, oh, if I had done that, then this would have been different.
And I don't either.
Struggle.
The only reason I had all of these things is because you said, hey, what topic do you want to do? And I was looking
and you had a chance to look through stuff while I was doing other things like
head.
Cooking supper.
And I had just... There's a meme going around on Facebook right now that is... two people or two doors, a red door and a blue door. You go through the one door, you get $1 million. You go through the other door, you get to go back and fix all of the little mistakes in your life. And so it had been on my mind.
You had been thinking about it before tonight.
Yes.
That's cheating. Well, so no, that's fine. So I forgot what I was saying now. Don't remember.
Apologize.
That's all right. I remember the last thing I was talking about is the patchwork quilt thing that I did and how, like, even though the pieces themselves don't seem to make sense, putting them all together makes me somehow, and me works.
It's like Dolly Parton's coat of many colors.
Right. It works, and I am able to do a lot of things in a lot of different ways. You know, one of the goofiest things that I got from working at Honors when we would do, like, one of my student staff members decided to do paper plate awards, where literally you took a paper plate and you wrote what the award would be on it, and you handed them out to the staff just at the end of the year for fun. And they wrote one up for me as the Jane of all trades. And honestly, that was probably one of the best awards I've ever gotten in my life. But yes, doing like the Nashville thing, it would have been great. I wish we would have been able to go down to Nashville and actually try to record something. If that opportunity ever arose, I would totally jump on it.
Right.
But it's not something that I necessarily want to spend a whole bunch of money to make happen.
No, right.
Or anything.
We're not going to quit our day jobs.
No, right.
No, I get it.
So, yeah, it would have been nice. That's why I went as part of the competition in the first place.
Right.
Because I would have loved to be a professional singer and do that kind of stuff. So, I don't know that it ever would have happened.
It's hard to say. I think you have a great voice.
All right.
Well, so what you thought was just going to be 5 minutes.
Yeah,
You know, I was able to drag, quite a bit out of you.
Make fun of me long enough.
I don't not feel like I was making fun of you, but I mean, definitely, got more out of you than what you thought was in there.
Yeah.
So, we would be interested in hearing what little things would you have done different?
Absolutely.
Because there's probably 100 other things that we would have done different. Again, we're just not thinking of them. They don't weigh on our minds all the time.
No.
No.
We
We don't regret our lives.
Right.
They're just those little things,
Right.
Everybody has at least one. Some people have 100.
Right.
It doesn't make one person better than another or worse than another.
No, right.
So, thanks for listening to our podcast.
Or watching it if you're watching on YouTube.
Right? Thanks for following us on social media.
Yes.
Hopefully you'll stick around and listen to the next podcast. I think we're going to continue down this path, and we're going to talk about the stuff that we as a couple would have done different.
Oh.
Put your thinking cap on.
Yeah. Again, this is the first I'm hearing of it, and we're going to record this right away, aren't we? So I'm not even going to have time to think about it, really. But it'll be fun. We'll see.
No, maybe. Depends. We'll have to ask the AV guy. Maybe he's,
done?
He might have another job he has to go to.
Maybe.
He might have had enough of us.
A little Don goes a long way sometimes.
You're telling me. And I got to put up with him 24/7. God. You have no idea.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.